evening, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. First and foremost, welcome to the International Centre for Sustainability, the ICfS. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. Those of you who have been here before for many of our other talks and discussions, welcome back. I'm glad you're all here. Before I get started, in fact, before I even get started with that, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Sachin Nanda. I am the Director General at the ICfS. Let me just quickly, for those of you who may not know what the ICfS does, we are under 2 years old, so we're a very new setup. We are a not-for-profit NGO, and essentially what we do is we do research, we do peer-to-peer training, and we do policy advocacy work between the US, UK, and India. And our job is basically to nudge a systems thinking approach towards sustainability. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. And like I say, we're a small team here, and we're slowly growing with the support of all of you and all of our members. So welcome and thank you. Just some housekeeping for you quickly. As always, we're not expecting a fire alarm, so if a fire alarm does go off, it probably means we have to vacate this space. The doors at the back can open and we'll go out there and then round to the front, or we'll go up the stairs and back the way you came into the building. The ladies' toilets are just outside these double doors on your right-hand side, upper flight of stairs, and the gents, you've got 2 flights of stairs to cover. Okay, so it was there. We're here because today I'm delighted to say we are launching a paper. And it's a paper that has been some time in the making. Work on this started several years ago. The idea of starting to research on this sort of line of thinking was even longer. And I'm delighted that the centre could work with Vichaar Manthan, which is a voluntary organisation which, again, drove a lot of the research, which we'll come on to in a moment. And I'm delighted that we can launch this report, which is very timely, considering what happened last week with the Gandhi statue in Russell Square. So I think it's timely. I think this paper is nuanced. So, I'm sure we're going to have a very, very interesting discussion. And of course, hopefully, it's the beginning of a conversation and certainly not the end. So thank you, all of you, for coming this evening. Let me just introduce the panel to you very quickly. So on my right, I have Onicha Dorang. Onicha is the author of this report, and she is the head of desk at the Future of Faiths vertical here at the centre. Onicha has a background and a master's in Buddhist studies from SOAS, and this is actually her first report as part of the ICfS. Yes. So she's definitely the lady you want to speak to once you've read the report and you want to connect with. The gentleman to her right is Yajur, Yajur Haria. Yajur is part of the Vichaar Manthan team that actually led and drove the polling and the surveying on the ground, and essentially is a mathematician, Oxford graduate, so we will commend him for that.
You shouldn't oversell.
and today, Yajur works in a pension consultancy called Rothsay. And he's a sustainability quant lead, whatever that means. I don't have a clue, but I'm sure you can find out from you. But what is important is that we were in the right hands. When we were driving this research forward, we were definitely in the right hands for it. So welcome. And then on my left, we have Lord Tony Sewell. Lord Sewell sits in the upper houses of Parliament. He's a Conservative peer. He has taught at Leeds University for many, many years. He also founded a charity called Generating Genius, which worked with young people from the inner city areas of London and trying to help them with STEM, which has been tremendously successful. And of course, the thing he's most proud of is that he's a fellow at the ICfS, which I have to say. And so Lord Sewell, along with the fellowship, guides some of the research that we do here at the center. So welcome, Lord Sewell. So what I want to do to get started straight away is I want to just open up with, there are copies of the report. There may not be a copy for everybody, but certainly if you get your hands on one, feel free to take it home. It's available online, it's available on our website, so you can download it, you can study it, reference it, etc. Onicha, if you can just share with us and set the stage in terms of, what is this report about, what made you do it, and what are some of the kind of key findings that you'd like to share with us?
Definitely, and thank you, Sachin, for your introduction, and thank you, Yajur, and the BM team for your work on collecting data, and thank you, Lord Sewell, and everyone for being here. Here's how I like to walk you through this report. I like to break it into 3 parts. First, why these reports? Second, our key findings. And third, our recommendations. Let's start with why. I think you have seen that religious hate crime has become a global phenomenon, that it shapes policy, that it divides societies, and it hurts community. People are just targeted simply because of their beliefs and their identities. And in response to that, we have developed the terms and the policies, educational efforts to address and confront it, something like Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. However, this phenomenon also happened to Hindus. You have known on the Resto riot 2022, or last week, vandalism of Mahatma Gandhi's statues. I think this could show that there might be some sign that anti-Hindu hate is rising, yet rarely named. And our goal is very simple here. We want to understand whether Hindu experience are accurately reflected. We want to understand whether public perception are fair, and to understand that there is a system well in place. Because without this, what will happen is British Hindus are left with no voice, and there will be no systemic way to address this, which means no solutions. All public awareness will remain negative, or even worse, intensify into violence. I hope that this is the first step to listen, to measure, and to analyze anti-Hindu hate and discrimination in the UK. I want to remark that this report doesn't say that there is yes or no. This is the first step that we will have a conversation together. So let's move to the next part, is our key findings. So among many more that we've seen on the reports, I bring 3 main key findings for you. The first one is, through our community surveys, we have found a strong perception of anti-Hindu hate and discrimination, especially among 3 domains: social media, mainstream media, and educational setting. And these perceptions are explained into 4 themes. First, Hindus are not fairly represented. So there is a 79% of respondents say that they see Hindu are not fairly represented on media. Second theme, Hindus experience anti-Hindu hate and discrimination. So there's a 43% said that they have encountered hate and discrimination online. Third theme, Hindus are unclear of what to do to report this incident, and they have a low confidence in institutional responses. 80% of them are not aware of, for example, how educational setting will tackle this problem, if there is. And last theme is, many Hindus choose to self-censorship over confronting it. There is 48% say that they will share less, or even no content related about Hindus online. On our second key themes, it will be that Hindu institutions fail in teaching Hindu traditions and fail in recognizing anti-Hindu hate. So in UK school, in understanding Hindu traditions, often taught through the lens of Abrahamic lens. And what happened is, misrepresenting core concept, or sometimes overemphasizing on many gods. And of course, with this, what end up is Hindu students are bullied at school, and teachers are not well equipped to tackle it. Through our university surveys, we see that there is a lack of awareness and lack of report mechanism. Out of 24 universities, there is none of them have specific policy guidance on anti-Hindu hate, whereas almost half of them have with Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. And there's only one university that have a specific track record on anti-Hindu hate. And you know what? Among of all of these universities, there is 0 case on anti-Hindu case. So moving to our last key finding, we have identified 2 critical gaps at national level. The first one is the lack of definitions of anti-Hindu hate. And second is the lack of report mechanism. Without clear definitions, what would happen is there will be no policy guidance, no police protocol, and no report mechanism. And what could happen is anti-Hindu could fall under the generic terms of religious hate crime. Official hate crime data in 2023 to 24 have shown that there were 193 anti-Hindu hate crimes of 1 million Hindus in the UK. And this rank at 5th comes after Muslim, which is have 3,600, Christian 3,200, Jews and Sikhs. And this number is genuinely low, would be very good news. Congratulations. But if it's not, it will be a very, very bad news too. Because what happened is, all the experience that Hindu have no voice to say, they will keep into themselves and within their communities. And if it this way, we think that possibly it is because there are lack of report mechanism. And this creates a vicious cycle, and let me tell you. So we start with the low number incidents of anti-Hindu hate, and then people come to a conclusion that, okay, anti-Hindu hate is not a thing. And then we don't need definition on this, and then we don't need report portal on this. And that's result in lower number because we don't have ways to report it. And moving to the last part is our recommendations. Our aim here are mainly 2 things on these reports and our recommendation. First, we want to understand the lift, the extent, the nature of anti-Hindu hate and discrimination. Second, we want to tackle the ignorance, prejudice, and hostilities toward Hindus, especially on social media, mainstream media, and educational setting. And with this, we have developed 3 core areas of actions. First, in order to capture, to measure, and respond to this problem rightly, what we need is the right data. And that data is reported incidents. And what we can do about this is that we can adopt the model that UK has with Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. And this could be done in 3 steps. Step 1 is to develop a clear definition. With a clear definition, they will have a clear policy guidance, and then also have a clear way to communicate at national and societal level. And step 2 is to launch a report mechanism, something like Telmama, CST, which is a national report portal for Muslim and Jews. And actually ICfS is also developing this portal, and this could be integrated at national level. And last step is to establish institutional working groups, which consist of key public bodies, and actively engage with Hindu communities to help identifying gaps and to conduct further research. On the second core area of action is to improve media standards and support mechanism for online hate. On media standards, those media organizations could engage with Hindu organizations in order to strengthen their understanding of cultural of Hindu traditions. And this could be done by training, by partnership. On social media, and to admit to you, it is more difficult. But what we can do is we can establish an organization or support the existing organizations that monitor timely response to the emergent threats on Hindus and collecting this data and inform regulators and communities. On the last area of action, we can strengthen Hindu educations and institutional response. Department for Education could partnership with Hindu organizations to support its existing work, or, for example, from the Hindu Education Board, in developing curriculum content for teaching Hindu traditions and to train the teachers. An educational institution can also engage with the local Hindu communities, that they can work together and develop their own policy guidance, report protocol, and can be spiritual guidance for Hindu students as well. And yes, I hope you have a clear overview of what this report is about, from the rationale of this report, key findings, key recommendations, and that's all from me.
Super, thank you. So I think that's useful, and I think sort of we'll come and explore that and maybe unpick some of that during the Q&A. What I want to do very quickly though is move on to you, Yajur, and maybe tell us a little bit about how we got to these results, or not just how we got there, what was the methodology that you used, but also what some of the challenges and limitations are with the data that was captured.
Of course. So let me not talk just about data for 7 minutes, because I suspect that's not going to be the most entertaining. But let me at least tell you.
Full of Indians would love maths.
Very true. But let me try and tell you the reason why we've done what we've done. Right. So as Ornisha said, after the 2022 Leicester riots, what we wanted to do, and as Sachinji said, that this has been in the making for a long time, but that became a catalyst for us to really think about and explore the extent of Hindu hate and discrimination. But that also became a really great reference point for us, because it told us what we couldn't do. And we couldn't go to an organization or to a database to try and unpick this.
Sorry, not clear about it.
We couldn't go, well, so after the 2022 riots, only 286 incidents across England and Wales were recorded of anti-Hindu hate and discrimination. To put that in context, in 2023, 218 were recorded, so there wasn't really much difference. And as Ronisha said, there were around 3,700 incidents reported by Muslims and about 3,300 by Jews. So putting it into context, and in particular in that year, the 2022 year, it tells us that we weren't, this isn't being reported. We have no data, right? So that's the starting point. We have no data, right? And that, if you were to ask me what are the challenges and limitations, it's that there was no data. There was nothing available, right? But it also tells you that the Hindu community is reluctant to report, right? That they're reluctant to engage. And we actually found that when we went out to community, because that became our primary kind of approach. We had to go through community. So we used convenience sampling and snowball sampling, effectively going out through mediums that we knew existed, and then hoping that snowballed, right? So we're hoping that contacts of contacts fill in the survey, right? Naturally, there are limitations to that, because you can potentially end up with a group of people who think the same, right? So there's a core limitation to the analysis that we've done and the data that we've gathered, but we recognize that. When we got the results back, we had to ensure that there was reasonableness of this distribution. So we got 839 responses back. Technically, that is enough for a statistically significant, to kind of make statistically significant conclusions. What was nice is that the age distribution, so we got a good range of ages responding to this, from 14 being the youngest to 85 being the oldest. We got good geographic distribution. I don't mean equally across all places in the UK. We mapped where we believed the Hindus were based on ONS surveys, and then compared that to the responses that we got. And we believed that what we received was reasonably representative. Educational background, and the time that these Hindus have spent in the UK. So we compared all of this to the national statistics that we've also gathered and compared against, and we believed that the sample was representative. After that point, we also did a series of data cleansing. So we recognized that when you do this kind of research, you have to scan now for things like bots, because that's a real concern. You have to scan for, so for example, if there are duplicates, if there are similar responses, and if there are multiple responses coming in at strange times at night, you can suspect that that's probably not someone doing it. And also, we included a series of qualitative questions in our survey, because what we find is that that is a really good way to find out if there's a person responding or not. And so where we found that there weren't enough good quality qualitative responses, we excluded that from the results. And similarly, anything that felt that seemed irrelevant. So responses where it was just gibberish, that was excluded. So you can know that we have sorted through this data to make sure that it is relevant and our conclusions make sense. The survey was 37 questions long, so it is a long survey. So, and we found that when we were going out to community, it's difficult to get responses back. And this is a fundamental issue with doing this kind of research, that we have to rely on our community to respond. There isn't readily available data, and I make that really clear. The second thing that we have to, the other limitation here is born out of this fact that we have to go to community. It means that the research that we now do and the conclusions are no longer does Hindu hate exist and is it rising in the UK? It's, is there a perception of? Right? This is, does the community believe that this is a concern? Not, this is a concern. Right? And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to understand what that perception was. And so our line of questioning was, is it present? Have you experienced it, or someone you know experienced it? Does it impact how you behave? Right? So is it severe enough to change the way that you behave in society, whether that's on social media or with your friends? Is it worsening perceptions? Right? So one of the fundamental things that we believed here when we started this research was that it is the perception and misunderstandings of Hindus and prejudices that is leading to anti-Hindu hate and discrimination. Right? So that was one of the core pieces of core sections that we were researching. And so the question was, is this snowballing? Right? Is this making it worse? Is the perceptions that you're seeing in media, is the education that you're receiving, is it making it worse? Do you know of reporting mechanisms? And are they effective? Do you think that they're effective? Have you seen any actions come off the back of any reporting that's been done? Right? And then we got fairly consistent responses, as Ornisha pointed out, that they feel that it is affecting the Hindu community, that there is a snowball effect, that mechanisms may not exist entirely, and if they do, they're not effective. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to go to the institutions to find out, well, is it affecting, do you have reporting mechanisms, and is it just that actually we don't know about them? Turns out that we only got 2 responses from the police, so we've discarded that from our conclusions. We got 24 responses from universities, and as Ornisha said, there aren't really any reporting mechanisms, there aren't any definitions for anti-Hindu hate and discrimination. Only one tracks anti-Hindu hate kind of activity and incidents, and none were reported. So it tells you a lot, that there is a perception within our community, within the Hindu community, that this exists. But we need to do a lot more to have anything conclusive.
Thank you. That's really useful, actually. And again, we're going to unpick some of that, or maybe delve in a little bit in terms of the methodology and kind of what this is pointing to. So I want to, you've obviously read the report. You obviously have quite a long set experience in dealing with this, and especially around race relations and community cohesion. Kind of what did you make of this report, A, and B, sort of, what does it tell you in terms of, if the Hindu community, which is 1 million strong here in the UK and kind of economically at least, and at some level educationally very, well integrated and performing, there are these sorts of challenges. Just share with us your remarks, your thoughts, and maybe what ought to be kind of the next steps that the community should take away with, I suppose.
Yes. I think it's really good. Good evening, everybody. I think that with a report like this, which I highly recommend, I think it's a great starter. It does exactly what it should do, and that is that it is responding to what I call the prima facie story that could be there. And in fact, we don't know for certain, but there's perception, there's an idea that things are happening. And I think that it's almost inevitable that it would be that if you look at particularly schools and who is doing what in schools and how teachers are perceiving success, and it comes back to that really in a sense. It's almost like what's happened here is that the success has meant that in a sense it's actually disguising a lot of things that are underneath. So for example, I do think that it's good to recommend, or at least to sort of commend, the parents have stated this, particularly in the school situation. They're getting the stories back from their children from schools. Something is happening here. And can I just make one thing? It's implicit in this report. I don't mind, the writers don't mention this. This is not, and I think we've got to be very clear here. It doesn't seem, back in the old days when it was all the P word and things like that, in the 70s, some of you know that, this is definitely about inter-ethnic fighting going on here. Yeah? Let's be honest, that is really where the core of this lies. Yeah? Which is a different kind of thing that we're dealing with. Now quickly on to, if that is the case, and that makes it even more complex and much more sensitive for schools and other people to deal with. I will make one example of one thing that I was involved in. I don't know if you know that school in Wembley, Michaela School, where in fact I was involved with the creation of that school in the early days. Was in fact, and this was a situation where I wondered in that school, where was the Hindu voice in that story? Because the story was really about a Muslim group that a particular parent that wanted prayer in that school in a particular way. The school didn't want, because it was going to be a problem in terms of the harmony of the school if they went down the route, because that would then mean that a power grab had happened in the school. And I suspect that what happened with the Hindu group in that school, which is strong, it's in Wembley, got on with what they did. They just got on with it. And nobody heard their voice in this. And I think that's an issue that they probably objected to it as well. But there was no mechanism to hear what they felt. The school, Catherine herself, the head teacher, took it upon herself to get that equilibrium right. And in some ways that thing was brilliant, because what she did, she went in the school and first of all found there was division around the meals. Children who ate meat went over there and vegetarians were over there. So she said, right, we're all going to be vegetarians. That's it, That's the rule, because she wanted harmony in the school. And I do think that what this report is driving is, how do we get to that harmonious story, really? And it's because people are not understanding that perhaps the teachers, that what we need is that voice there. I think what is needed for this piece of research to fly is, and I'm going to put it very bluntly here, is real investment from the Hindu community. Yes. Yeah? Because what we need to do is we need to go further with this. This is prima facie, right? Let's go in and now find out if this is really the case. Now, it could be that there's nothing to see here. Let's be honest. It could be that, a few incidents, we can deal with that. Or there could be a fundamental issue. We just don't know. And I do think that sometimes we can let these things, and if you let these things go, if you say nothing, you know, others will move up for you, yeah? So I do think there is a kind of appeal almost here to those that, and it's not just the centre, it could be other organisations, whatever, to say, right, what's next step? Right, we're going to do a big research study into this, deep dive to find out what's really going on, ethnographic study where we take on the perceptions, and particularly the teachers. Because what the voice here I'd like is some of those head teachers talking to somebody like Catherine Verbal Singh in her school, all these people trying to get an understanding as to what was the politics here, what was happening, to have more voices. So my sense is that we need to really move on a very practical level here and begin to deep dive into this. I'll say one last thing. I've come from a situation where there's been, I mean, if you talk about the black situation, particularly the Caribbean situation, there's been millions spent in dissecting that group and what's been happening and all the perceptions around racism. And you could argue, well, wait a minute, maybe they have suffered worse. Well, not necessarily, you know. It's just that they've just got louder voices, you know. And they've got the microphone, and they've got all these politicians speaking for them. And is it the case that that might be why one, and of course now the big group that's getting all the attention is the Muslim group. You know, they're getting, so it's interesting that the groups that are louder get the attention. And, you know, and it could be that there's a perception, well, there's nothing to see here because they get the great results. Similar with Chinese community. You know, they're getting the great results. What's the problem here, you know? And yet if our children are saying that, young people are saying that there's an issue, if parents are saying there's an issue, we should respond. So my appeal really, I don't know how the rest of you feel, is that we do need to go further with this in more depth.
Thank you. No, that's really, really useful. So we've heard kind of, you know, sort of the report, key findings and recommendations, which we can come to as well in the Q&A. We've got methodology and how they took the approach, and rightly so, what do we need to do next, right? Just before we kind of move into Q&A, I just want to bring in Verinder Hair. She's from the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service. Just 2 minutes, very quickly, if you can explain to this audience, how does the CPS approach religious hate? And what are some of the challenges that you see in that? Could you share just a few quick, brief comments?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, we'll just give you a mic. We'll just give you a mic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. So I'm the hate crime lead in London North, CPS, and I have also...
You might need to hold the mic slightly closer.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Yes, so good evening, everyone. So I am the hate crime lead. My name is Verinder Hair. I'm a district crown prosecutor, which is the legal manager, and I have been basically leading on hate crime. So in terms of what you have asked me, how CPS deals with religious crime, there are 5 strands of hate crime, which is race, religion. There's also homophobic crime, transgender crime, and disability hate crime. So in terms of, Mitesh comes to our hate crime scrutiny panel, in which we invite members of the community, and we go through our finalized cases, and we ask their views into how for learning from them, and then we take those views accordingly. In terms of religious crime, I collated a data, but I'm not going to go through the data. For 6 months, in 6 months, religious crime, we had 2 against Hindus and 2 against Sikhs. So the referral rate is very low in terms of prosecution. Either, as Lord Sewell was saying, we need voices, we need people to speak up. The more people speak up, and we need unity, like CST have got their own organization, they have got people, Shomrims, who help them. I prosecuted a case, very high profile case, in which Mr. Abdullah Qureshi, who went to Stamford Hill, which is a Jewish community area, and what he did, saying nothing, he was just hitting Jewish members of the community. So one guy was 14 years old, the other one was 17 64. He punched him so hard that he broke his foot, and the other boy was given a slap, and one guy was standing on his phone. He hit him with a bottle. So how did I what happened? We dropped that case. The prosecution dropped that case, and Jewish community was very unhappy. They made complaints to the Director of Public Prosecution, and he then went to the area, which is my area, London North, and he went to my Chief Crown Prosecutor and made a complaint. We looked into the file, and we looked into the evidence, and the Chief Crown Prosecutor decided to reinstate the proceedings. And then they assigned that trial to me. So how did I prosecute that trial? The police didn't have any evidence of CCTV, which was helping me. So each time I'm thinking, how I'm going to prosecute this trial. So Shomrim have collected the CCTV from various shops, and then they gave that CCTV. The police didn't give that CCTV, so I went to the inspector, superintendent. I said, I need those CCTVs, please give them to me. So those CCTVs were given to me. So what happened was, so my cross-examination to the guy was that, you went to that shop. He said yes, and the judge was not allowing me to play that CCTV in court. And I said, I need to play that CCTV. It's very crucial for me. Whole media was present in court. A lot of media was present in court. They were present. And then I said, he said, you're wasting court's time. I said, no, it's very important to me because that shop was owned by Asian people. So he goes in there, and then he simply just, he took a bottle of water, and he went to the counter, and the guy snatched the bottle of him. He didn't say anything to him. So he was angry, but he didn't say anything. So then I just put him in cross-examination that you didn't hit those people. They annoyed you, didn't they? He said, yes, they did. And I said, but you didn't hit them. He said, no. I said, why was that? Oh, well, I just couldn't be bothered. I said, yeah, you couldn't be bothered. The reason why you didn't hit them because they were Asian. And the reason why you hate Jewish people because you hate them. So that's how, you build your case. We need to gather evidence. We need unity. We need to speak up. And we need to just like go into the community and say, raise your voice, as Lord Sewell was saying. Race crime was not heard before. And the government has passed a law that if somebody has committed hate crime against any race, religion, or any transphobic or homophobic or disability hate crime, we in courts, we ask for sentencing uplift. So if the sentence was 12 months imprisonment, we'll be asking for sentencing uplift, and that's mandatory. The judge has to impose it. So that sentence could be 15 months, could be 16 months. So any crime against any race, religion has been committed, but religious crime against Hindus is very, very minimal.
Thank you so much. That's really useful just as a case study for us to say, no, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's really useful for us just to understand, right, the complications and how.
We need to raise our voices,
yeah.
basically. Yes.
Thank you. So I'm just conscious of time, and I want to open this floor up, the floor up to all of you. Obviously, many of you may have already glanced at the report or read it. Some of you would not have, and I'm sure you will later on. But you have an expert panel here. You have the author of the report here and somebody who drove the actual quantitative research. This is your opportunity to kind of ask some questions around this and seek clarifications and maybe explore some next steps. Please. Just house rules, sorry. I'll come to you in a minute. House rules. Hand up, I'll come to you. I'll try and take 2 questions at a time. If you want to ask anybody specifically a question, then obviously let us know who you're asking that question to. If it's generic, you'll allow me to pick, I hope. And then keep your questions fairly terse, please. Thank you. Yeah, just wait for the mic, it will come to you. Yeah.
Thank you. A question for Yajur. How do you separate out the ethnic discrimination against from your data set of about 900? How do you distinguish between ethnic discrimination or ethnic crime versus crimes against the religion?
Excellent. So this is the ethnic, race, and religion. How do we bifurcate that? And there's a second question here we'll take as well at the same time. So that one's for you, Yajur, specifically. Yeah. And then Annabelle, yeah.
Yeah, this question is not linked but separate. Now, quick question is, how do we balance between a freedom of speech and anti any religion, race, or anything else? So it's being currently perceived. So that's probably my question.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got 2 questions, and I'll come there. So let's take the first one.
Sure. It was really quite simple in our approach, which was that throughout the survey and the questionnaire, we defined what Hindu meant. So anyone who was filling out the survey was very clear that this was a survey on anti-Hindu hate and discrimination, and we defined it very clearly in the survey as well before it was released. The survey itself is, you can see it at the back, and that's the approach. And it was really the simplest approach in that we had to be very clear.
Did you have to have any, did you end up filtering any questionnaires that come to your mind where you thought, actually, no, they're talking about race here, or they're talking about ethnicity here, they're not really talking about religion? Did you have anything like that, especially in your qualitative stuff?
So I think, broadly speaking, we didn't actually have that many. I don't think we had any results that we ended up having to shift because we were talking about ethnic versus religious. We filtered through every response, and we didn't have to do that.
That's fine. That's good. It's good to know. And the second question, I suppose I'm going to come to you first, Lord Sewell, on this one, because I think it's probably more is this idea of, in fact, and then Onicha and you both, yeah. So freedom of speech. When is it my freedom of speech to say something, do something, before you cross the line into hate?
Yeah, I don't know if you know that there's a bill that's coming through, which we're looking at in the laws at the moment, that in it we call it the sort of the anti-banter clause, where in fact what happens is if you're in a pub, let's say a group of us are in a pub together, and we say something that is anti-Muslim, say for example, and the waiter hears it, who may be from a Muslim background, they can prosecute the pub owner can be prosecuted.
So should we do that? So if we're having a chat
That's
here,
right, yeah. And
nothing happens to us, but the pub owner.
The pub owner is going to be prosecuted.
You're allowing it to happen.
For allowing it to happen. So you see, I mean, so in a sense, we're in this, and I think this is where you're probably getting at with this question, because in a way we're in this dilemma of trying to, and it is quite interesting that it does hover always around race and religion. That's really its core. Or sexuality, for example, that would be another thing. So if we were talking about a trans situation, and then the person overheard, you say, yeah, who gets is the owner of the pub is going to be the one that's going to get locked up, or fined or whatever. And I think that for me, I think in this instance, it comes back to this whole issue, I think, of what happens in those schools, for example, and who's responsible. So, for example, I don't think you can allow children to just go off, Hindu children even saying, or from Hindu background, saying anti-Muslim things, and the other way around, right? So I think that has to be policed in a school context. I do think that there should be consequences, and children should understand that. When it comes to the general public out there in talking about things, my sense is that I think there should be maybe a different line here, because overhearing things or things like that, or it could be just it's a joke, which is not, which is said amongst people. Now, is it the business of the waiter to really then do that or not? And I think that's where I think the line is difficult. And then of course, if you really meant that, then you should prosecute the people who are saying it, not the pub owner. So I do think we're in difficult territory here, but it comes back to still this whole idea of bullying in a school context, for example, where you could be within a minority. So for example, the minority Hindus in a Muslim context, and you feel bullied, then I think that the school should have policies around it. Now, what happens? Let me just tell you. This is what we get. It's the issue of inter-ethnic thing. What we've got are laws that are around white on black and Asian or whatever. It's not. There's almost an assumption that this thing doesn't exist. They're all brown people together, so they're not going to say they're not going to harm each other. They're all brown. And for example, it's quite interesting. There's a very interesting thing happened when there was quite serious racism going on between Africans and Caribbeans. And then we thought they're all people together. They ain't going to do anything. And so the school has these weird stereotypes around the perception. And I think that is really what we want to get at in terms of freedom of speech, or lack of.
Lovely, thank you. And I think, Anisha,
Yeah,
you want to say
quickly
something?
one. I think very good questions because, and at the same time, with freedom of speech is something that we can do another work on because it's under the big umbrella of political philosophy,
That's right.
and that bring to the law enforcement later. But what I can say is that this is why we use the term anti-Hindu hate and discrimination. Because we want to focus on hate and discrimination, something that is tangible, that it can, it can measure, which is come from real action, prejudice and hostilities, that's as an intentions, that falls to actions in terms of hate speech. Someone say like, Onisha, you get fatter, but Onisha, you get fatter in terms of like want to make me cry, right? That intentions make difference also, but that's why we back to the prejudice and hostilities, and then we see the actions correlate together. So that's why again we don't call it as Hindu phobia because phobia is something deep inside, but we want to do phobia to the point that you hit someone. So that is a hate and discrimination. That's all from me.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. And then you want to?
Yeah, just one quick point, which is that I think hate and discrimination ultimately breeds from prejudice, ignorance, right? I'm not saying that it starts there, but it breeds there. And so I think we really need to get a lot of these dialogues right. So we're talking about freedom of speech versus hate. We need to find a way to facilitate these dialogues, whether that's at schools, whether it's in communities. But that understanding, there has to be an effort to build understanding between communities and between people. Because if you don't do that, if you just shut speech down, it will. I believe that the problem will just get worse.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and Professor Shah first, and then Yogesh over there. Yeah.
Hi, thank you.
Where's the mic?
Fascinating. I'd like to pick up on Lord Sewell's point about kind of a proactivity from the community, and in particular focusing on education, which kind of again extends with what Yajur has just said, both at school level and at university level, and whether there is any work being done about the content, the quality of the education, and effectively the preventative work around Hindu phobia. I know as an academic and a social scientist, what I'm hearing, not just from non-Hindu scholars, but even from Hindu academics about anti-Hinduism is quite worrying, So there is this whole, because of neoliberalism, there's this whole kind of secular, very strong secular trend in the social sciences, and then religion, if at best, is a kind of little box on the side, yet it's a very deeply social and cultural
What's
phenomenon.
your question for Lord Sewell? Or was it reflection? More of a reflection
about
point.
I can reflect.
Yeah, education.
Role of
Do you
education.
want to reflect on that very quickly?
Yeah.
And then we'll
There's a
continue?
quick reflection. Look, I think that the way in which in fact we now do stuff, particularly in the social sciences, in our universities, in our schools in particular, is to sort of try and park religion and make it out so that it's in a box outside of just that's religious, and then we do the other stuff. And to me, religion is so fundamental to how, I mean, we got here in terms of civil wars, in terms of everything, good or bad. Religion is just there, it's a reality. And I think that, so for me, I think I want more, and I want a greater understanding, especially about spirituality, as what that actually means. That means some training for teachers. Not necessarily to go off and, do things that are spiritual themselves, but an intellectual understanding, a rigorous understanding of that. I think that there might be a two-way process here. Is it that, in fact, the way in which Hinduism in Britain is perceived? I remember a friend of mine saying, "This is my culture." And I think, what does she really mean by my culture? She was talking about Diwali and stuff like she was going to do, and about her language. So this personal thing, so it's a personalized thing. Also, as we know, there are variations on the theme of Hinduism as well. So is that, in the end, we can't have it both ways. If we're going to give it out to everybody else to understand and to assimilate, and your book is another thing that we want to look at. Look at the whole process of culture and religion. in which case it can't be mine anymore. You see, I think this is almost the kind of dilemma that the Hindu community must have with itself. I mean, in a sense, Judeo-Christianity is out there and it's up there for consumption. Unfortunately, the vast majority of white Britons don't want it anymore, which is unfortunate. You know, that's why the churches are empty. You know, but it's out there, whether we like. Now, I put it back to you as a question, you know, as it were, a rhetorical question, is that if we keep the thing personal and it's my culture, it's my thing, it's from my community, then the expectations of teachers to be able to then teach this, share this, understand it, that means you've got to let it go.
I don't think if we did a survey that the result would be that majority wanted personal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in that, in fact, I'm just going to dovetail that exact, and this is, you know, Universe Conspires. Yogesh, just, I don't know if you can give the mic. So you look after Hindu Education Board, and one of the Hindu Education Board role is to try and educate teachers, from my understanding. So please tell us a little bit about that and then your question, because that dovetails into this question.
So I represent Hindu Education Board, and what we are trying to do, and your question is absolutely right, and this report refers back to the Insight report that was published back in survey was done in 2020, report was published in January 2021, telling us what is the state of religious education focusing on Hinduism in the UK. Fast forward to today, what Hindu Education Board is trying to do is trying to create content that can be consumed in schools, that can help teachers to teach Hinduism or Hindu Dharma in the right way. Because at the moment, the content that is available, that is either absolutely, or okay, some of the content is wrong, incorrect, misrepresenting our Dharma. And so we are trying to correct that. It's a long sort of journey. We have just, you know, we are also four-year-old organization. And so, but there are efforts that are happening. And there is two level, formal and informal. And informal, the responsibility is on all of us. For example, now Diwali is coming. There will be lots of opportunities for Hindus to go in local schools and do assemblies.
And I think that's the point you were making, that you have to go
Can
out.
I just make a quick point here?
Yeah.
We've just had a curriculum review, which is going to be published soon. I don't know if any of those people who did that curriculum review consulted yourself or anybody else. And so in fact, we're going to have an education thing completely reviewed by this government. It's going to come out in a few weeks' time, and is the Hindu voice in there?
I don't think it was there, because we came to know about it quite late, and we have been talking to DFE obviously in the, you know, when earlier government was there. So we were talking to them regarding all these issues, but obviously the new government hasn't sort of that message hasn't been carried forward. So we were not involved. But you're absolutely right.
I think there's a quick point, and there's a point you made, is that, believe me, the Muslim voice is definitely going to be in there. Yeah? Jewish voice is definitely going to be in there. You see? So the question comes back again to, are we lobbying enough for some of that stuff? You know?
Fascinating. Thank you so much. There were some other hands. Yeah, so one, Mitesh over here, and then one at the... Yeah, okay, one at the back there, yeah, okay.
One of the things we haven't touched upon is the media. So we know that, you know, in the last 4 years, you know, our research, as Inside UK, we've done a report on media perception of the British Hindu community. And the outcome was that the Hindus don't trust the media, and the media is a huge kind of element which feeds others into anti-Hindu hate or creating anti-Hindu hate. What can we do to tackle the media narrative?
Okay, so that's on media. And is that for anyone specific? Did you have that? Anyone? Okay, and then there was a Annabelle question right at the back there. Yeah.
My question was, as a young person, what could I or other young people be doing to stand up and vocalize my Hindu experience, or just vocalize my opinions and stand up for my community? What would be the best way to do that as a young person?
Okay. And you're asking that from a specific representation of the students at university?
Just in general, so like
Just in
as
general.
someone that's a student but also someone that's postgraduate, at that age, early 20s, late teens, what could I be doing to do that?
And is that question targeted at any?
No one, anyone,
Just
everyone
general.
counts.
Okay, so let's take this first one then very quickly. Oh, you didn't ask your question, did you? Okay, we'll come back to you. So the media.
Yes.
Who would like to, would you like to tackle that? What did you?
Yeah, let me clarify, you mean mainstream media? And through the news, mainstream TV, and also you include that. Yeah, in that
print media as well.
yeah, print media. Yeah, in the reports we have covered that part on the main media, basically on the how the Hindus things around that have experienced it. At the same time, the external report also from you that we see that for what it's like. So I put it this way as my recommendation. That is, the media house. Many of them lack of understanding of Hindus. And many of them just feed into each other negative, wrong understanding. Like, oh, okay, I understand because of like this media talk, so I will just based on this, and I will do my other reports, news because of that, right? They cite each other. So what we can do is we come as a communities, okay, go to them and have an engagement, and maybe not only the communities, but we need some like public bodies that have power and to intervene that and say that we need to change because here is a consequence.
So you're talking about education as well as almost like a community
that educate
observer.
Media organizations.
Yeah.
Educate media organizations again. And at the same times, we also can do the counter arguments, right? When they raise something that's wrong, we do it and we separate through the communities. Because this is again with the matter of unities. It's again with a number of voice. If there are 10 people say, they don't care. With 100 say, okay, they need to listen.
So again, lobbying
Yep,
and scale.
yep, exactly.
But the core point there was education, because a lot of this stuff comes out of ignorance, it seems.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just one more point, a couple more points on that. I think when we are lobbying these media houses and social media groups, what's important is, and we speak a little bit about this in the report, there needs to be connection to community with these media groups, right? So they need to have some form of working group, or we need to lobby for a working group that allows them to connect with community, because ultimately, and we found this, that educating the general public around Hindu philosophy, the Hindu community, is difficult. We're still trying to grapple with how do we do it. But if we can connect these groups and these organizations and institutions with the Hindu community, so that there is a Hindu voice, as Lord Sewell will say, there needs to be a Hindu voice in the room to say this isn't okay.
Right, interesting. And then I want to pick up on the question of young people, right? So we won't define young. We'll just call it fairly broad.
I was going to ask.
But we get the point. Under 60s. So does the report touch on? I mean, obviously, you cover a lot about what happens in schools, and then what teachers and parents can do potentially. But young people themselves. I mean, reflections on that.
Yes, definitely. For me, I feel like the younger you are, the easier for you to change people's mind, because we still have a fresh ideas. We don't have strong prejudice, especially when you look at universities. Like the clubs that they are joining and that they share idea. So I would suggest that we can start from those who think the same way as you, maybe share the same ideas of practice, beliefs. And then you make you feel that you feel comfort, and you see that and someone understand you, to the point that you have a voice, you feel that you have voice, and then you can become louder to have the interfaith conversation with other faith too, because it's at the end,
So educating other faith groups within.
But start from you got to have a strong group as well, and open and want to learn from them and want them to learn from you. And I really, really believe that, because I also work with a lot of children in Thailand. The younger you are, you really, really open, and the conversation is easy. Okay.
There's a different thing. I just want to come back, Annabelle, So and this time you can ask your question. Sorry, I moved away from you too quick. I got you to and then we'll come to you, sir.
One quick question, and this is comment come question to the panel. All your three recommendations are absolutely perfect. They are spot on. But if one wants to make use of the forums to report and all those kind of things, or influence in educational institution, and this is again a comment come question, do you think that the Hindu community is aware of the identity and have the self-respect and the confidence to report? I feel that is the underlying reason why we have less number of reports on Hindu hate. Again, it's a broad question, how we can improve the situation. Because 1 million Hindus and whatever 100 odd cases or 360 cases, it's less number. And I feel it is the confidence.
Understood. So I think when you were discussing, one of the things that you both flagged up was that you both tangibly saw that there was a lack of confidence in the institutions. So there's two elements to this. One is that actually, do they have just lack of confidence to do anything about it, and they just self-regulate, you call it? Self-regulate? It's a self-censorship. Self-censor, that's one. And the other is this, where actually you don't have any confidence at all in the institutions that you could even share with. Is there anything on that both of you can reflect on?
Yeah, so when we were doing our initial research, one of the reports that we reflected on was the Pankandola report, which specifically looked at discrimination in the workplace. And what it found was that Hindus weren't reporting incidents because they were self-censoring ultimately. They talk about overreacting, right? So there's this sense that, if something happens to me, I'll go away in a room and I'll think, is this really, is this worth reporting? Is it not? Am I overreacting? Right? And then they'll come to the conclusion I'm overreacting. And actually something that we were talking about earlier was that the Hindu community then it weighs up its priorities, right? And it says, is it worth me reporting this versus becoming labeled as a troublemaker? And actually I care about my progression in this company and care about kind of progressing economically and financially, etc. So you know what? It's better that I don't raise it, right? And that's what happens, right? And the second, I think that one of the key reasons why that happens is this isn't well defined, right? So we haven't defined what anti-Hindu hate and discrimination looks like, and so we can't educate our community. And secondly, ultimately, we lose confidence in the institutions because they don't have a definition. They don't act on it, and that's something that came through in this report. We don't see an action coming from reporting, and then we start to think, maybe I was overreacting.
Interesting.
Right.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question. We'll take your question over there. Annabelle is right next to you there.
With Hinduism, is it working?
Yeah.
With Hinduism, I almost find Hinduism is a amorphous. I mean, we say Sanatan Dharma is a way of life. It's almost a label that's been applied to the religion or the people rather than a dogmatic, as the Abrahamic faith. So, does the panel think this almost affects the Hindu voice, so to speak, and the lobbying that needs to be carried out?
Fair.
Because I think what we find in, part of me is the why for this report, because there's a pragmatism in there as well when you say people look at, kind of integrating and prospering and moving on, which kind of explains how Hindus have developed,
Yeah. So I think I've understood the question. So I understood the question. Go on, we'll take your one question as well. I know you had your hand up for a while. Annabelle, just here. So we'll take both. Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. So we'll take your question first, then we'll come to you.
I want to share my experience, but I think
We'll do it afterwards.
But it's less time.
Less time. Okay.
The question is that to the panel here. And what I experienced, the children, when an incident happened out of the school, then the head teacher don't take any responsibility. Whereby the children, those who have suffered bullied by anything, they won't report to parents either.
Right.
Because if the parents take the matter to the head teacher, or outside, they will be further bullied or they will be scared to go to school. So there are fear among the Hindu children in certain parts, for East London, which have experienced a couple of incidents in East London.
Right, right.
They don't
Understood.
report it. And when I raised with my grandson, he was in one of the redress school whereby 80% of the children are Muslim. His friends are Muslims. And when I raised some of the issue and discussed with him, and then the whole message goes that we are racist Hindus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Muslims.
Right.
So
Understood.
These are the issues faced by the kids
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
the school. And the parents have the difficulty to raise it further.
Fine. Understood.
Yeah.
We'll reflect on that in a minute. And just this gentleman had a question just here.
Just very quickly, I understand that yes, Hindu community do not raise too many concerns and do not file too many lodge any complaints or kind of thing. However, it's being observed that even if we lodge a complaint or put the complaint on that, it is being ignored. Hindu complaint is being ignored. I mean, just get the response that okay, it is not possible to find out or to, just to be vigilant and that's it, and just give some guidance. But police do not pay attention to that problem.
Yeah.
How can we resolve this?
Excellent. So we've got three questions here. The first question was about this idea of the Hindu community is not homogeneous. It's actually quite amorphous. It's very diverse, blah, blah, blah. You've had to tackle this in a big way in your report. Do you want to share your reflections? Not to give any conclusions, but it's a real challenge. And how did you approach that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we talked about this earlier, about the difference of the Hindu communities when we compare to other religious group. Because even back into India, right? Each communities have their own deities, practice, belief. So, but it's at the whole, yes. But to work together, it has some challenge.
I remember you trying to write this and you were struggling to even define this thing Hindu, right?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest part, Please take a look later on. Because the Hindu is described in this way. I found the professor from Oxford explained it quite nice. He talked about like a prototype theory, meaning that we are family. Father, mother, sister. We come from the same family, but what exactly that you have in common? Do you have the same kind of eyes, eye color, sometimes not the same hair? But yeah, we know we are one family, but if you want to ask me to identify one notion, we can't, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think this is the core that you mentioned about the diversities. And I back a bit to the living way of life and to the questions before. I think that Hindus are adapting too well to the society. Adapting too well to the point that you look outwards to how to adapt yourself in. So what's happening to you, like to your belief, your practice, you don't really voice because I'm in this country, I will adapt to it.
Super. Thank you. Interesting. And so that is a real challenge and it's going to continue to be a real challenge. Lord, so I just want you to reflect on the gentleman over here who shared that experience about his grandson. And you touched on some of it, but just and a specific question about some of this stuff happens, the Hindu hate stuff happens outside of any institutional coverage.
That's right. And I think that it happens to any group, I think. It's not, this is where it's not exclusive, but it happens to students like, a lot of the time who do well in school. I do think that is, in my case, you dare not tell your parents that you did something well or badly in school because they'd beat you anywhere at home. I used to get beaten from my head teacher, then I told my parents they would beat. So no, in a sense, the school is the trusted institution. And this has been the kind of, if you like, the pro thing for the immigrant who wants to do well here. We trust the school, we trust those head teachers. They're the model. They're sacred. And I think that what then happens is then we have this dilemma with our children when they come in and they say, wait a minute, the thing isn't moving as it should do. How do we then challenge it? And I think that's really, I think, where the thing goes, particularly for grandparents as well, who see that. My sense is that I do think here is where we've got to kind of lobby the school in some way. And I come back to this whole idea of we need the data, we need the voices, we need the information so that we can then go into a wider discussion with the world, really, that this is a reality, or may not be a reality. We don't know whether it's just a one-off with your grant. We really just do not know. We're not certain. And my hunch is that it's more than that, and it's coming. I don't want to sound like Nigel Farage here, but I mean, it is coming from a particular community who are being radicalised. Let's be honest, and that's coming in a direction, and the children are also being radicalised as well. So we've got to be alert about that, and we want to educate the head teachers and the teachers that there are children who are in danger. So you want to say something?
I want to say, in East London, where I live in Ilford, I see every 4, 5, 6 houses Palestine flags.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law is a teacher in one of the schools. When I think the community is so vocal or forceful in the society, and the current political situation is appeasement is going on, or frightened being called racist or Islamophobic. The politicians are afraid to say that this is not right, this is wrong. So what I'm trying to say, all children started coming with wearing the flag of the Palestine in the classroom. So there were issues in this particular school, and then they raised the issue with the head teacher. Hindu parents were quiet, couldn't say anything. Yeah. Then the head teacher made a decision. Yeah, you can't
wear the
flag in a classroom. Yeah. Fair enough. They started putting on a jacket, and all the jackets are with a Palestine flag in the whole school.
Right. Yeah.
So when the boundaries can be set.
So even the schools are being politicized, right? Okay, I just want to pick up, and the question over here was around complaints when they get ignored, right? Or feel. Do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can. So a lot of that comes out in the report, right? That you're right. We don't feel confident in the authorities, in institutions, in tackling issues when it's reported, and that comes out really, really clearly here. And frankly, how many times have we called, something's happened and we thought, should we call the police? What are they going to really do? And then you just don't bother, right? You just stop. And my view is, it comes very much back to the first couple of statements that Lord Sewell said, that frankly, we need to inject a bit of cash into this. We need to create our own reporting mechanism so that our Hindu community knows where to report, and we can hold these institutions and these authorities accountable. Because if you don't know who's reported what's happened, how do you hold these institutions to account? You can't. You haven't got any information. You can't go and say, by the way, there are 30 cases that were reported again in your constituency, and nothing's happened about it. Can you do something about it? We can't if we haven't got that information. How can you do it?
Can I just support that? Just a very quick point. There was, and you can look this up, when I did the race disparities report, one of the sources for our information was a thing called the Race Disparities Unit. And that just collected all the information, all the disparities around race and stuff, and it was in a hub. And it was that they had that. Perhaps we need something equivalent to that, or at least even that Race Disparities Unit being fed information into it, because I didn't remember anything about Hindu hate at all in there. Zero. So, I mean, it's almost new. So I think that's something we could think about.
So I'm afraid we're out of time. I've already let it go 10 minutes over time. And of course, we can keep discussing this for a very, very long time. But so first and foremost, thank you to the panel, and thank you to Anisha and Yajur for putting this whole report together. Please do study it, please do read it, and please do give your feedbacks, because it's the beginning of a conversation. And I think the key takeaway here is if this is the perception of the community, we now need to test the hypothesis with real data. And that is time-consuming, it requires skill, and it requires money as well. That's for the community to reflect and
I'd just also like to thank, there was a team,
Of course, there was a team, wasn't just DC.
So I want to thank the team.
Yeah.
I'm just the one up here speaking. There was a team that was fully involved over the last few years. So absolutely thanks to them.
Quite right. Thank you for coming. I am going to let you go very soon, but as I mentioned at the beginning, everything that you see here, everything that you see the center producing is, this is a not-for-profit center. If you can support the center, please do so. Follow us on LinkedIn. For those of you who want to stay maybe more closely engaged with some of our work around ecology, environment, water, democracy, technology, AI, you can become members of the center. And that will allow you access to some of our private roundtables, which are not for the public, but they are very, very interesting and informative. In fact, I'm going to share with you 2 events that are coming up very soon. Next week, 15th of October, 6:30 till 8, we have a K lecture. The K stands for Krishnamurti, lecture on progressive conservatism in India. Hedgewar and the RSS at 100. And then a week after, on the 22nd of October, 6:30 till 8 p.m. again, we have another report launch. This is a roundtable called Whither Tibet in the Climate Crisis Agenda. So again, something very different, and that our own Shruti Kapil, who heads our security and mutual dependence desk, she's at the back, go and catch her if you want to find out more about that. And some of our research around water is there as well. So these are the kind of events that you can all engage, come to, register for, and stay in touch with the center. As I say, do think about supporting the center both by coming to our events, but also by becoming members. And Celia will only let you out the door until you've become members. But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming.